Hello, welcome to HITC Sport. Right, let's take a look at every Champions League team and find one player in their current squad who was a Premier League flop and grade just how badly they actually did in England. Right, let's go. Bayern Munich, Serge, Gnabry, 2 out of 10. Okay, I suppose I could dig up Jerome Boateng for this list after he only lasted one season and less than 20 games at Man City, but no, unlike some of these players, he wasn't like a diabetic clown on roller skates. No, he was just a bit unsettled due to the fact it rained every 20 minutes. The real answer here is Serge Gnabry, who honestly looked like a chubby pup player who snuck into a Premier League match. He was only ever given 10 league games for Arsenal. Sure, he scored against Swansea, but there was a guy who couldn't dislodge Theo Walcott from the team, and his loan spell at West Brom was the final nail in his English coffin, with Tony Pulis chucking him onto the pitch for 12 minutes against Chelsea, and then that was it. A potentially world-class winger stuffed on the bench watching James McClean and Callum McManaman picked ahead of him every goddamn week. Grazed above, not even a headbutt from Pulis in the showers would have been as insulting as that. Lokomotiv of Moscow, Grzegorz Krychowiak, 3 out of 10. West Brom fans will watch Bayern Munich versus Lokomotiv of Moscow this season and see a couple of their former flops going head-to-head in a Champions League match and feel like getting sick in a bucket. Krychowiak's a 30-year-old Polish midfielder tucked safely into the Moscow midfield, but utterly failed when on loan from PSG at West Brom in 2018, playing less than 30 games, having zero influence under Alan Pardew and helping the club to relegation. Surprised he's not scrubbing toilets to cost a coffee after that. Red Bull Salzburg, not applicable. Sorry lads, no former Premier League flops at Red Bull Salzburg, so moving on. Atletico Madrid, Stefan Savic, 4 out of 10. Well, Atletico Madrid have a couple of former North London derby rivals at the club, and of course Diego Costa and Luis Suarez, who utterly chewed the Premier League to pieces. Especially Suarez, I mean, he did it with a knife and fork. But like Boateng, Stefan Savic was another defensive disaster at Man City, and his time can be summed up with a bunch of 11s. He replaced the German in 2011 for 11 million quid, and he played just 11 league games. He was so bad he made Julian Lescott look like the modern day Maldini by comparison, and that was it. Just pretty forgettable. Shakhtar Donetsk, not applicable. Again, no Premier League flops at Shakhtar Donetsk. Next, Borussia Mönchengladbach, Valentino Lazaro, 5 out of 10. To be fair, Valentino Lazaro wasn't completely useless on loan at Newcastle last season, but he was pretty forgettable. On loan from Inter Milan, the 24-year-old winger was largely stuffed at wing back. He played 15 games, scored a couple of goals against West Brom and Bournemouth, but considering Steve Bruce would rather offer a contract to an unfit, out-of-form Ryan Fraser, then Lazaro clearly can't have impressed that much now, can he? Inter Milan, Matteo Darmian, 4 out of 10. Okay, Antonio Conte is an Inter Milan squad stuffed with former Premier League footballers, but lads, the likes of Alexander Kolarov, Ashley Young and Alexis Sanchez were definitely not Premier League flops. Sure, Young might have spent most of his time at Old Trafford frustrating the fans and letting pigeons take a dump in his face, and Sanchez might have strolled about the turf like a pensioner who's just had a stroke, but they did have their moments in this league. Especially Sanchez, at one point, he looked like the best player in the league. Matteo Darmian though, oh he did not. The original Diogo Dalot. He spent 4 years at a Man United team in crisis, and with erratic fullbacks on the books, he should have been able to hold down a first team spot. But no, Darmian never did it. He was just a poor £12 million signing from Torino. What was Louis van Gaal thinking? Real Madrid, Thibaut Courtois, 7 out of 10. Okay, let's be honest, there are no Premier League flops at Real Madrid. They only have 3 players who've ever played in this league, and I can't pick Luka Modric or Eden Hazard now, can I? Arguably 2 of the greatest Premier League talents of all time. So let's go for Thibaut Courtois, who was mostly world class at Chelsea, but towards the end, he was a very distracted number 1, who just like a Love Island contestant, suddenly began to find it very difficult closing his legs. Man City, Benjamin Mendy, 4 out of 10. Okay, let's see, who's the biggest flop at Man City right now? Unequivocally, Benjamin Mendy. I'm sorry, but if you pay £50 million for a left back, you might expect some proven world class quality, or at least someone who knows how to clear the ball. Mendy has spent most of his time stuffed in a treatment room. He's played less than 14 league games in over 3 seasons, never scored, mostly defended like an erratic bird brain. Honestly, he's been outperformed at left back in this league by Matt Ritchie. That's just embarrassing. Olympiacos, Ruben Vinagre, 6 out of 10. It's harsh to call Ruben Vinagre a Premier League flop, considering he's only a 21-year-old left wing back, but hey, he did largely struggle to get into Nuno Espirito Santos' Wolves team before being loaned out to Olympiacos. Not great, but not a disaster either. Marseille, Florian Thauvin, 3 out of 10. Okay, well I could go with 26-year-old French left back Jordan Amavi, a £9 million Aston Villa flop, part of that chunk of relegation dross back in 2016. But no, I'm gonna go with Florian Thauvin, who was also relegated that year with Newcastle. This guy's transformation since leaving Newcastle has been heroic. Moving back to Marseille, initially on loan in 2016, he since scored 66 goals, won the World Cup, being handed the Marseille captaincy and linked with Bayern Munich. And Newcastle under Stephen Claren, however, he had all the impact of a rusty sock. Turning up to games in a tuxedo, messing with his hair every 6.5 minutes, Andros Townsend looked twice the player at that club, which shouldn't be the case when you compare the natural ability. I mean, how many World Cups has Andros lifted above his head? Thauvin was just a £30 million flop. Porto, Philippe Anderson, 4 out of 10. Well, I could go with Marco Grzegorz, the forgotten Liverpool midfielder, or Chancellor Mbemba, who was a fan favourite centre-back at Newcastle, but he still got relegated. Basically 2016's version of Sebastian Basson. But no, the biggest Premier League letdown on Porto's books is Felipe Anderson. It's a bad sign when West Ham pay £40 million for you, and then just 2 years later are willing to let FC Porto borrow you for a season. An exciting Brazilian talent at Lazio, linked with big money moves to Man United and Real Madrid, and after a promising 10-goal season in London, then completely stunk up the place under David Moyes, being utterly outshined by Robert Snodgrass. This guy just didn't have the stomach for a relegation battle. Put him in a Samba football dressing room, then sure, but stick him next to Mark Noble in midfield, and he breaks out in a cold sweat. Atalanta, Martin de Roon 4/10. Well, Pierluigi Golini, that dreadful Aston Villa goalie, is somehow at Atalanta, but he never actually played Premier League football. Thank God for that. It'd be like sticking the ball boy in goal. I'll go for Dutch midfielder Martin de Roon, who was signed by Middlesbrough for £12 million in 2016, and then got relegated before being sold back to Atalanta for a cut price fee. Liverpool, Takumi Minamino 6/10. Okay, let's be honest, there are no real Premier League flops at Liverpool right now. The closest I can find is Takumi Minamino, a £7 million signing from Red Bull Salzburg last Christmas, and it was always going to be impossible to break into the front three, but it's a bad sign when he's already being replaced by Diogo Jota. This guy is the next Lazar Markovic, isn't he? Ajax, Davy Klaassen 3/10. This was such a stupid signing. When Everton paid £23 million to bring in Ajax captain Davy Klaassen in 2017, despite the fact they were also chucking £50 million to Swansea for Gylfi Sigurdsson, and they also brought in Wayne Rooney on a free. So that's 3 number 10s. Great, that's like shopping for your dinner at Tesco and just buying 3 birthday cakes and no vegetables. Pretty sure that's how you end up like Craig Shakespeare. Klaassen was woeful at Goodison Park. He played 7 league games, no goals, no assists. This guy had signed up to play under Ajax legend Ronald Koeman, not the guy who was one of English football's biggest memes. FC Midtjylland, Mikkel Andersen 0/10. Yeah, here we have a 31-year-old Danish goalkeeper Mikkel Andersen, who spent 8 years on the books of Reading between 2007 and 2015. He was never given a shot in the Premier League, instead being loaned out to Turkey, Rushden Diamonds and Bristol Rovers. He probably felt like sticking Brian McDermott in the oven. Krasnodar, Remy Cabella 4/10. Okay, Florian Thauvin and Remy Cabella might as well have been the same player at Newcastle, just with a slightly different haircut. Both lightweight French wingers who are about as sturdy as a block of Weetabix. Craze him up, Cabella looked like he'd been knocked over by a gust of wind. I'm pretty sure if he ever set foot inside the confines of a gym, he'd probably burst out in a ball of flames. Anyway, he was the predecessor to Thauvin, an £8 million flop from Montpellier, and he's currently playing Champions League football in his 30s with Krasnodar. In the northeast though, 1 goal in 31 games? Oh god, considering he just scored 14 for Montpellier in the previous season, that was a laughably poor return. Ren Mbai Niang 5/10. Yeah, good old Mbai Niang. A 25-year-old Senegalese striker up front for Ren. His Premier League stay was so brief, he's probably forgotten he was even there himself. On loan from AC Milan, he played 16 games for Watford during the 16-17 season. He scored twice. Yeah, he's not exactly getting a statue outside the ground. Chelsea, Kepa 5/10. For a goalkeeper who cost over £70 million to now be stuffed in a jacket on the bench, oh, it's all sort of embarrassing. For the price paid, Kepa is arguably being one of the biggest flops in Premier League history. Lazio, Wesley Hood 4/10. Where do you want to start with Lazio? Andres Pereira and Felipe Saucedo are worthy contenders. 2 South Americans who couldn't hack it in the wet and windy Manchester, but I'm going to go with Wesley Hood, a 26-year-old Dutch centre-back who was supposed to replace Virgil van Dijk at Southampton in 2017. By comparison, he looked like he was barely able to control his feet. A £15 million waste of time. Anyway, he's back at Lazio now on loan. Club Brugge, Simon Mignolet 6/10. Listen, Simon Mignolet nearly spent a decade in the Premier League. He can't be that bad. For Sunderland, he was actually a very good signing, plucked out of the Belgian wilderness by Steve Bruce. Although, to be fair, he was in goal when they conceded 5 goals on North East Derby. He was a £9 million signing for Liverpool back in 2013, and he was never convincing. He eventually lost his place to Loris Karius, and has since been booted out of Club Brugge. Zenit St. Petersburg, Yuri Zurkov 4/10. Yes, lads, Yuri Zurkov is still going strong at 37 years of age. He was a brief Chelsea flop back in 2009, the most expensive Russian of all time, costing £15 million. Nowadays, that's couch change which wouldn't even buy Mike Ashley's lunch, but back then, Christ above, that was a lot of money for a left winger who never settled or scored in 29 Premier League games. Borussia Dortmund, Torgan Hazard 0/10. Bit harsh to call Torgan Hazard a Chelsea flop, but lads, did he succeed at Stamford Bridge? No, he was clearly only brought along from France in 2012 to keep his brother happy. He never played a single minute of football for Chelsea in any competition. But then again, this was during an era where Mo Salah and Kevin De Bruyne were also left in the attic. So what chance did he have? Barcelona, Gerard Piqué 3/10. It's incredible how Gerard Piqué was trying to break into a star-studded Man United team, and yet he's arguably the most successful member of that alumni. Anyway, he couldn't break into the team back in 2008 and was bullied against Bolton in a wet and windy game which sealed his fate. He just couldn't hack English football at the time. Juventus, Juan Cuadrado 2/10. Juventus have squad utterly squashed with Premier League flops. The worst one, I'll go with Juan Cuadrado. A £23 million signing for Chelsea from Fiorentina in February 2015. It was a deal which ended Salah's Stamford Bridge career, chucking him out in the opposite direction. Lads, getting rid of Salah for a winger who scored scored 0 goals in 13 games. Oh, well done, Jose. Dynamo Kiev, Carlos de la Pena, 0 to 10. The only player in Dynamo Kiev squad with English experience is Uruguayan winger Carlos de la Pena, who wasn't given a chance for Middlesbrough in the Premier League, instead loaned out to Real Oviedo halfway through their season. Ferencváros, Adam Bogdan, 1 out of 10. Adam Bogdan actually plays Champions League football. Seriously, this is a guy whose Premier League CV includes relegation with Bolton, letting the opposing goalie score against him from 102 yards, having on-pitch meltdowns for Liverpool, including dropping a corner in a 3-0 defeat to Watford. If you're sticking gingers in goal for Premier League matches, I'd rather pick HITC James. RB Leipzig, Alexander Sordov, 3 out of 10. I could pick the third Liverpool goalie in this list, Peter Galaxy. I could also pick Man City misfit Angelino, but no, instead Alexander Sordov. This Norwegian striker played 16 league games for Crystal Palace in 2018 and 2019, and he didn't score once. And this is the guy bought to replace Timo Werner. Man United, Daniel James, 4 out of 10. This might seem harsh, but in terms of an overall Premier League CV, Daniel James must have the worst in the Man United squad. As an attacking player for Man United, a 22-year-old whose explosive pace is apparently on par with Kylian Mbappe's, he scored just 3 league goals in 35 games. Out of his depth. PSG, Moise Keane, 1 out of 10. I could pick Angel Di Maria, but he at least showed flashes of brilliance in England. Moise Keane, though, was a complete £30 million potato for Everton. 2 goals in 31 games of football, replaced after 12 minutes in one match. A Golden Boy nominee, heir to Mario Balotelli, and he used to be outscored by Michael Keane. Istanbul Başakşehir, Karen Fry, 0 to 10. Ever remember Karen Fry? A 26-year-old Turkish midfielder who began his career at Fulham, barely played, loaned out to Cardiff before being sold to Besiktas in 2013. Anyway, that's it. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and as always, I'll talk to you in a while.